From Eyewitness News, this is Newsmakers.
A $9.4 billion budget proposal unveiled by the governor. Its centerpiece, a borrowing plan to fix school infrastructure.
Let's come together and make a once-in-a-generation investment to fix our public schools.
In an effort to close the deficit, the budget comes with a patchwork of fixes, including a big bet on betting and tapping into two kinds of smokers, hiking the cigarette tax and dramatically increasing the number of marijuana compassion centers. Now it all heads to lawmakers who have their own ideas about what should be in the tax and spending plan. What does the budget's chief architect hope survives that grueling process? Our guest this week on Newsmakers, Governor Gina Raimondo. Welcome to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. Joining me on the program from WPRI.com, reporter Ted Nesi. Governor, welcome to the show. It's good to have you back.
Thank you. Good to be here. Happy New Year. Haven't seen you guys yet.
Congratulations on another budget, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to put it. And that's where I want to start. And Ted and I certainly are going to get into like the nuances of the budget and whatnot. But I have a broader question. It just seems like even in economically good times, like we are in right now, the budget always feels like it's in disarray and it's deficit plagued. Do we need to just accept in Rhode Island that we will always have a budget that requires patchwork means to try and get it back into balance? Is it always going to feel like this? I mean, this is a good economic year, and here you are still trying to close the hole.
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. The deficit is much smaller than it was, right? So we've made a lot of progress on the deficit since I've been governor. What's coming out of Washington is creating serious headwinds for us. So, but for the uncertainty coming out of Washington, which is keeping our revenues artificially depressed, like in 25 other states, I think you'd see us to be in better shape. Because as you say, the economy is better. The economy is stronger than it's been in a very long time.
But you can't say uncertainty in Washington is why DCYF has a deficit or the Buddha agencies.
But that's a drop in the bucket, though, Ted. I mean, DCYF is doing much better than when I took office. Like, running relatively in line with their budget, 25% fewer kids in congregate care, out-of-state placements way down, foster care up. So meaningful progress on every score. The economy, of course, unemployment rate's half of what it was when I started this. So I think you make a good point, which is, gosh, this economy is booming and still we have a deficit.
Right.
I think some of it, too, is we're providing health care for a lot more people, which is a great thing. It's something I'm very proud of. One of the first things I fought for as governor, to keep our exchange local. That's the good news. The good news is almost every Rhode Islander has health care, and we're going to keep it going. The budget I propose has no cuts in eligibility. But, Medicaid is one of the largest, faster growing parts of the budget. So as I look at it, it's a balanced budget, no tax increases, broad-based tax increas, and continued investments.
But it's kind of a balanced budget, isn't it? I mean,
it's a balanced budget.
You're placing some bets on, quite literally, in one of them, that certain things are going to pan out a certain way. Is it responsible to, as you say, and I'm going to put it in air quotes, balance a budget?
Particularly, so people maybe who haven't followed, the sports betting is getting a lot of attention because you have to win, or New Jersey has to win a U.S. Supreme Court case, which might not until June, for the money to come in to allow that new program. That's $23 million.
No, absolutely true. We expect that they will. Every other state is expecting that. Connecticut's already passed legislation to hit go on it. Massachusetts is ahead of us. New Jersey's ahead of us. So I think it is responsible. We have good models. Delaware's been doing this for a long, long time. So we've looked how much money they've been able to get from that. I don't want to get behind. We want to be able to hit go so that when the Supreme Court says we can do it, we're ready to go and we can.
You don't want to get behind, but what happens if it doesn't? You don't want to predict.
We figure it out. Look, what happens if the government shuts down? What happens if they don't reauthorize CHIP? What happens if revenues are lower in May than they are now? There's a huge amount of uncertainty. That's part of the governing process. So this budget, we sat down and we said, here's what we know. We don't want to raise income taxes, sales taxes, corporate taxes. We don't want to make cuts to people's health care, to vital services, to the vulnerable. And we want to keep investing in economic growth, rebuilding roads, rebuilding bridges. that's what this budget does.
Another thing that's getting some attention, budget wonks never like this. There's a good amount of money scooped from the quasi-public agency reserve accounts. Check online if you want to know more about that, because it's complex. But it's basically taking money out of there. It won't be there next year because you only can pull it out of the account once, one-time revenue. You made your bones on truth in numbers back when you were pensioned. Is that really responsible budgeting, to just be yanking money out of a quasi-public's account to paper over the deficit?
I think it is, in the ways that we've done it. Again, there's no easy choices. When you sit down and you're $200 million in the hole, you have to make a lot of tough choices. And I decided, there are certain non-negotiables. I don't want to raise income taxes on folks. Don't want to stop investing in education, job training, roads and bridges. Want to continue the momentum that we have. So you have to make choices. What you're referring to, the scoops as you call them, are very modest in the context of a $9 billion budget. And I think they're very responsible, and we've done them in coordination with the agencies.
You don't think it'll harm the agencies?
Absolutely not. Rhode Island Housing has $100 million of reserves. This is a drop in the bucket, and it will have no impact on their ability to invest in affordable housing. Having said that, as we go down the path, if revenue continues to rebound, if there's less uncertainty, et cetera, would we like to restore that? Absolutely. But in the context of a tough budget and a lot of uncertainty, I think it was the right thing to do.
One of the things that you made sure was in the budget, something near and dear to the Speaker's heart, and that's the car tax.
Yes.
You just rattled off some non-negotiables. That wasn't one of them. Is your heart in the car tax phase out?
I think it's a great thing to do, right? Rhode Island, as I said the other night, it probably is the most hated tax in Rhode Island. I hear about it all the time. I hate it. I hate, you pay the sales tax when you buy the car, you pay the tax again when it sits in your driveway. It really hurts the folks who can least afford it. So yes, I am supportive of it, absolutely. It is also expensive though, right? So in this budget alone, it's nearly $50 million.
Right.
So yes, I am committed to it, and that's why I put it in there, and we're going to keep going. But when you ask me, any hesitation, it is expensive.
When one of your big talking points around the budget is commitment to small manufacturers. You were at one actually Wednesday afternoon, I believe you visited one in Cranston. The money behind it, as you read through the budget document, seems relatively small. $300,000 for a tax credit for them, $200,000 for pad-ready manufacturing sites. How much of a difference is that amount of money going to make to the manufacturing industry overall in Rhode Island?
It's a great question. I asked a similar question. This is an idea that came from a working group that I have of smaller manufacturers, and it's their top priority. So, this came right from the industry. These are folks running small manufacturers, which, by the way, is nearly all of the manufacturers in Rhode Island. We talk about Electric Boat and Raytheon, but most manufacturers are quite small. And what they'll tell you is it's often a small amount of money that makes the difference between buying a new piece of equipment and then growing their business and adding jobs and not. So I hope it happens. I think manufacturing is a good way to make a living, and we ought to be more supportive. I suspect if it is as successful as we think, those numbers will go up over time. We're also putting big investments in job training for manufacturing. It's just the right thing to do. I met a fellow the other day who was at that event. He was taking a job training class for manufacturing. He was in the middle of his career. He worked now as a dishwasher. He makes minimum wage as a dishwasher. And I said, how do you like your job? He said, I don't like it. I don't like working full time, not making much. I'm a dishwasher. He said, I love this. He'll graduate that program. He'll get a good job in a manufacturing company. He'll double his income. And so there's more money in the budget for those job training programs. I
have another gambling question for you. The sports gambling we're talking about earlier in the show has to happen at Twin River. You have to do it in person. There's a lot of interest in online gambling, and the understanding is that would need a constitutional change. But overall, would you support online gambling? Would you support a constitutional change so Rhode Island can do that?
I wouldn't oppose it on ideological grounds, but that's for the voters to decide. So if the people of Rhode Island said
I guess my question is, how would you vote on that?
It would depend. So again, I don't want to get into hypotheticals, but I don't have any, philosophical opposition to it. There are a lot of legalities to what, to go through. How do you regulate it? Precisely what are we talking about? And then, as you say, the voters would have to decide, because that would be an expansion.
One of the things that surprised some of us was that your State of the State didn't mention the ongoing UHIP computer fiasco, which you did address a year ago in the State of the State. If you'd included a paragraph this year about where things stand with UHIP, what would you have said?
I would have said we're in a much better shape than we were a year ago, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. So we are, a year ago, we were really challenged. The software vendor, Deloitte, wasn't doing what we needed them to do. We didn't have enough people working there. It was a real issue, still a big issue. But, January, there were no lines at DHS. We are essentially processing food stamps in a timely fashion. So we're making progress, but we're still not there yet. And I'm keeping Deloitte under an enormous amount of pressure until they deliver, because they launched over a year ago. The state's paid them an awful lot of money, and the system's still not working the way it needs to be. And we're still not paying them. I haven't paid them in almost a year. They've given us a $100 million credit. So big progress, but not out of the woods.
I know it's a General Assembly's headache right now, so I just have one question on the Paw Sox for you. On Thursday, the House Democrats held a caucus on the proposal. And the idea of the Paw Sox proposal going out to the voters has been shelved, but the quote coming out of that meeting was, they, meaning House lawmakers, want the proposal improved. They do not support the current proposal. Based on your understanding of the talks leading to this point, is there wiggle room on the part of the owners to shift more risk onto the team?
That's a good question. So I don't know. I think probably not. And what I would say to the House is just do your job. Have hearings, make it specific. What kind of changes are we talking about? Perhaps tiny, small changes, maybe. The bigger the change, the more opposition there would be. At this point, I think it's time for them to take action. The Senate took action, had, I think, excellent hearings, vetted it, made some small changes that I understand probably are okay with the owners. The House ought to do the same thing. My position is I'll support anything that protects the taxpayers of Rhode Island. The deal that's on the table now does protect Rhode Islanders, I believe. It's a fair deal. It keeps the Paw Sox in Pawtucket, and I don't want to lose the Paw Sox. But I also don't want taxpayers to get hurt, and so I think this is a pretty good compromise.
Do you think they're really seriously talking to Worcester, or do you think that's just a fake negotiating strategy for Rhode Island?
Yeah, I think you have to take them at their word. They say that they are seriously talking to them, and I think we ought to take them seriously. But here's how I look at it. I know that the politics on this are difficult. I think that if in 10 years from now we drive by that Apex site and it's still empty and the Paw Sox are in Worcester, we'll regret it. And so the deal that's on the table now, it's a good deal for taxpayers. I don't think this will cost Rhode Island taxpayers anything over time. Remember, if they lose, we lose income taxes on players, sales taxes. So I think we got to ask ourselves, what's the right long-term thing to do for the taxpayers? And I think it's a good deal.
All right, why don't we take a break on the program? When we come back, I'm going to ask the governor about what the effects of a potential government shutdown would have on Rhode Island. Stay with us. You're watching Newsmakers. Welcome back to Newsmakers. I'm Tim White. To my left from WPRI.com, reporter Ted Nesi, and our guest this week is Governor Gina Raimondo. Governor, one of the challenges to this program for Ted and I is sometimes, we tape on a Friday, and a lot of the people watching this at home right now, it's Sunday to them, although you can watch it online much earlier than that if you like, WPRI.com. And we have a podcast that's quite excellent. So that being said, in this case, as we sit here right now, we are all watching for a potential government shutdown down in Washington, D.C. And as a matter of fact, coming into the studio, Ted said, there's a big meeting happening down there right now. But even if a budget a funding plan is approved, it's likely going to be a short-term continuing resolution, so this question could be relevant down the road.
Yeah.
If the government does shut down, how does it impact Rhode Island?
Yeah, it's a big problem. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. So when I leave you guys, I'm going right back to my office, and I have a big meeting with my cabinet and my directors to figure out the details of exactly how it'll affect Rhode Islanders, and make sure we do everything we possibly can to limit, the negative effects on Rhode Islanders. But, let's be clear. Most of the money that funds our Department of Health comes from the federal government. Much of our money for Department of Transportation comes from the federal government. We have any number of health care programs, Medicaid, health care, the exchange, food stamps, all from the federal government. So these guys need to do their job. It's beyond politics. Everyone everyone I know, there are people in your neighborhood, kids at school, your friends, their lives in Rhode Island will be made worse if they have a shutdown.
So people hearing this will go, wait, is she saying the RIPTA buses are going to stop, and if I rely on Medicaid, I can't go to the doctors?
RIPTA will not be affected. Depending on how long the shutdown lasts, yes, it could affect that for the doctor's office if you're on Medicaid. Again, Department of Health, the vaccination programs we have. So for a day or two or three, we might be okay. And of course, we'll do everything we can. But they need to do their job. We all pay federal taxes. People deserve their health care. They deserve the bus. They deserve public safety. And get it done.
You mentioned healthcare. I want to ask you a different healthcare question. Brown University's president, just came out strongly against the proposed takeover of Care New England Hospital Group by Partners of Boston, which we should know more about where that stands pretty soon. She said it would be bad for Rhode Island on multiple levels, jobs, care. You have a pretty good relationship with Brown's president, Chris Paxson. Do you share those concerns? Have you talked to her about it?
I have talked to her. I think she's doing an excellent job, and I do have a good relationship with her. I have to be a little careful because we'll be the regulator in this ultimately. Here's what I would say. I wouldn't support any plan that I thought would take care out of Rhode Island and bring it to Boston. So depending on, I would get behind a plan that says care stays local. Rhode Islanders shouldn't have to go to Boston for routine care. And it would be hard for me to get behind anything where I thought at the end of the day, jobs go to Boston, healthcare goes to Boston, specialty care goes to Boston. I know she's put forth a competing proposal to the partners proposal, and we'll be looking at both of them along the same lens. Keep the jobs here, keep the healthcare here, and keep the cost down.
You weren't a big supporter of the Trump tax cuts. Do you concede many of your constituents will see a benefit from them now?
No.
Well, wait a minute. What about National Grid? I mean, they just lowered their increase by $25 million. Or
fair enough, but it's not. Look, the negatives vastly outweigh the positives. I stand by what I said. Wealthy people do not need a tax cut. Corporations do not need a tax cut.
But the tax cut doesn't just go to wealthy people. Wealthier people see a bigger chunk because they have more money, but other people will see tax cuts.
The average Rhode Islander is not going to see a tax cut. Wealthy Rhode Islanders will see a tax cut. If anything,
I think the Tax Policy Center says a whole like 5% of people, 80% will see a tax cut nationwide.
It remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. I also think northeastern states are over time going to be hurt by this. It clearly favors Republican-controlled states with low property taxes and low state income taxes.
Because we use deductions, itemized deductions,
correct,
and so on and so forth.
because we use itemized deductions. So, we leaned on National Grid because I think Rhode Islanders already pay enough for their electricity and energy, and I'm pleased that they've resubmitted their bid.
Oh, but you leaned on, they had to redo it because of the tax law. That's not your administration. They did. PUC sent them a letter saying you have to recalculate
and
now on your tax.
PUC.
So did you directed PUC to?
I support what they're doing. The PUC, yes, they had a tax cut. They did the right thing, by the way. I'm not, this isn't against Grid. They did do the right thing. They didn't have to. The PUC required them to, and they responded. So, no, I still don't support the tax plan.
What about one other question on the tax plan? CVS, right here, our biggest company. They've always been one of the highest tax companies in the country because their operations are domestic. They're going to save more than $1 billion a year, they say, and they're pledging to invest it. Do you even say CVS didn't need a tax cut?
Yes, I do say that. I hope that every company who's received this tax cut uses it to pay their employees more, invest in their communities, invest in their companies, bring their cash back from overseas to America. That doesn't apply to CVS so much, but a lot of companies. So if those benefits happen, terrific. But here's the thing. You're about to see, because of this Trump tax cut, the lowest levels of public investment in decades. We need investment in our schools, in higher education, in our roads, in our airports, in our bridges, in healthcare. And the sum total of these tax cuts, I believe, is going to be bad for the everyday American, the everyday Rhode Islander.
I want to get a timeline update for you from you on the truck toll. In September, Director Alviti said construction would start in December, tolling in January. You were on the show shortly after that, and you sort of you pumped the brakes on that timeline, and you were a little more cautious. But certainly his timeline has passed. What are the projections now?
Well, what I said then was in the first quarter of this year,
yes,
which is by the end of March, which is what we're still planning on. You ought to get the exact date from him, but I believe February is the timeline, but definitely the first quarter of this year. What I had said to the team was, just get it right. So if it means you delay it by 2 or 3 weeks or a month,
you're a little nervous about technology,
right.
Governor? Is that
exactly.
the case?
I have learned, and that's what we delayed the DMV IT implementation as well, and it went off without a hitch. So I said to them, take the time, get it right. But by the end of March for sure.
Okay.
I have a somewhat offbeat question that comes from viewers and from people. When we had the snowstorm, we had an enormous amount of inquiries on social media from people saying, why won't the governor declare a state of emergency? And as you listen to people and asked, and why, why would they want things shut down? A lot of people said, well, if she doesn't do a state of emergency, my employer makes me go to work even if it's dangerous, or my husband's employer or something. And they were really upset. People were upset that you hadn't declared the state of emergency for that. You've, of course, explained some of your reasoning for that, but what do you say to folks who that came up? I can't tell you, Governor, how much we heard that from viewers as we tried to understand why every time you came out of press conference, they said, ask her why she's doing that. So I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, no, I heard it as well. There's a bunch of reasons. You don't want to declare a state of emergency if the conditions don't warrant it, because it's a little bit like crying wolf. When there is a true emergency, you want to use it for that. The other thing is it's expensive for the state. Certain triggers happen. Overtime has to be paid. Different things have to happen. It can cost a lot of money for taxpayers when you trigger the state of emergency. Clearly, we need to do a better job with employers to to ask them to do the right thing and let their employees stay home so that they're safe. And we'll work on that.
There's this push or talk to rename TF Green Airport, possibly to something like the Rhode Island International Airport or something like that. What do you think?
What do I think? We're hearing from airlines that the good news is TF Green's booming. So we're flying direct to so many more places. We have so many more airlines. What we're hearing from them is, in order for them to sell tickets to places all over the country, they need to sell this as the Rhode Island Airport so people know where TF Green is. If in fact that is true, then I think we need to be open to it, because we want to keep the progress going that we're having at the airport.
When you walked in for the State of the State, you were greeted, not for the first time, by protesters who don't like the Burrillville power plant idea.
Yes.
And the president of the Burrillville Land Trust, who said he may file to run in the primary against you this year, he's so unhappy about this. He's pointed out you received 2 maximum donations from the CEO of the company behind the power plant. Was it a mistake to take those?
I don't think so. Look, as you know, I have thousands of folks go online and whatnot and contribute to the campaign. The important thing is I'm not accountable to them, and I'm accountable to the people of Rhode Island, and it has zero impact on the decisions I make. The protesters there held signs quoting me, because I went up to Burrillville and talked to them. And at that time I said to them, look, if this is unsafe, if it's bad for the environment, if it's not good for the community, it won't happen. So they hold up signs which, quoting me, saying, if it's unsafe, it won't happen. I still stand by that. You know, it's been a year and a half. It's still going through the process. I have faith in the process.
It's not time for you to just pull the plug and say it's too unpopular up there?
I can't pull the plug. This is a...
But if you said you opposed it, it would probably die.
Absolutely
bit of a pulpit.
Not.
You don't think it would die if you came out against it?
I do not. I absolutely do not. This is a process with integrity. They are going through an incredible amount of, you know, scientific study, environmental research, water quality research, and I think we have to let the process play out.
All right, we are out of time here, Governor. I want to thank you very much for coming on the program.
You guys.
I know it was a very busy week.
Go Patriots.
Go Patriots. Let's hope
pray
for Tom Brady's hand is okay. If you miss any of it, it's online, WPRI.com. Ted Nisi, I'm Tim White, and we will see you next week on Newsmakers.